Hello, my name is Talip Küçükcan. I welcome you to TRT World Forum Digital Debates. Today, we are going to talk about COVID-19 and its impact on the European Union, the current status and the future of that international organization. Our guest today is Franco Frattini. He is a well established diplomat, former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Italy. And let me introduce him to our audience, then we will continue. Mr. Frattini, welcome to our program. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
that you were available, and I hope that we are going to have a very fruitful discussion. But before that, let me introduce you to our audience. Franco Frattini is Italian judge, and also he is the president of the Italian Supreme Administrative Court and president of the Italian Society for International Organization. That is a non-profit organization, as I understand. And of course, he has a experience in politics. He was the Minister of Foreign Affairs. He previously served as Foreign Minister of Italy, Minister of Public Administration and Intelligence of Italy, and of course, to our audience, this is an important addition. He was the Vice President of the European Commission and EU Commissioner for Justice, Freedom, and Security. As you can see, he is the right person to talk about actually what happens in the European Union after COVID-19. Mr. Frattini, as we all aware, this pandemic was unexpected, but it has a huge impact on the global level, not only on the nation states, but on the global stage. So I would like to begin by asking the following question. COVID-19 has a significant global impact. What is your view of the pandemic's impact on the evolution of the European Union? What kind of EU do you see emerging in a post COVID-19 world? Because everybody agrees that the post COVID-19 will be different: international relations, economics, health services. And how do you foresee the post 19 COVID-19 EU?
Yes. Thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting to this very interesting forum. At the very beginning, immediately after I would say, the first impact of the crisis, many in Europe used to underestimate the impact of the crisis. This was a very unfortunate period of time. I think about the months of March, beginning of April, where many in Europe even used to say, okay, but it is a Chinese problem. Okay, maybe the Italians that travel too much and they are infected. Suddenly, they realize there was another story. And in that moment, Europe, I would say, has shown the first change to the rest of the world from underestimating to rightly estimating the real impact. In that second moment, many in Europe realized it was not only, of course, an Italian problem. In a moment where rapidly the contagion in Spain or UK overcome, even in a more aggressive way, the situation in Italy and France and Germany are today in a very worse situation than in my country. European countries started to say, okay, what to do now? This is the second phase. In that second phase, we saw, unfortunately, national egoisms with a tendency to prevail, the ones against the others, the northern against the southern European member states. We even heard some prime minister saying, why should you pay for the Italians? That's impossible. So this was exactly the opposite of European solidarity, which is a basic principle of our treaties. Then the third phase was, I would say, the best one after the first and the second, because the large majority of the member states realized that unless Europe had a common decision on the recovery fund, on how to face economic impact on member states, Europe would have been divided. So the unity of Europe was at stake. At a certain moment, the very idea of European identity was under threat, because when we saw around the table of European Council, I attended as a foreign minister so many councils, but this was the most dramatic ever European Council, where prime ministers and head of state, the ones against the others, till a decision was taken in the sense that we are all in the same boat. So the final result is Europe has understood that European Commission should be in the lead, should manage this huge amount of money. We are talking about hundreds and hundreds of billions of euros to be distributed, some by grants, some by loans. So, and the second thing is that we have to go ahead with national reforms, because in a country like Italy, like in all the other countries, we don't want to waste common money, because this is a money of European taxpayers. So the final situation was to strengthen European Union, but we have to be very vigilant, because every moment there could be, for, I would say, electoral reasons. In many member states, there are elections. For political domestic reason, the tendency to go back, to say, okay, but the money will come only in late spring 2021. If the money will come in 21, it will be too late. So three phases. The phase number three has shown to the rest of the world that fortunately European Union is still there.
I think that was a very good summary of the first reactions and the following developments. And I think also it indicates how you view European Union as an important, I think, actor. My second question relates to the nation states' responses, actually, because COVID-19 seems to have demonstrated that a number of EU member states, as nation states, but they are member of the EU, their healthcare system, for example, they have terribly failed. And it seems that they need to reform that healthcare system, as well as responding to emergency situation like COVID-19. And of course, now there is an economic issue, there is an economic crisis. How do you see that those countries can adapt to the new demands and the needs of the countries that we are talking about?
Well, for my country, first of all, it was a completely unexpected situation. You have to take into consideration a very important element. The north of Italy was heavily affected, not the south. So it was the regions that are by far the richest in Italy and among the richest regions in Europe. Lombardy, the most severely affected by the COVID, is comparable to Bavaria in terms of per capita GDP, in terms of richer, and nevertheless, Lombardy, Veneto, Piedmont, the northern region had to adapt immediately to transform normal hospitals into intensive care hospitals, and working together to try to find some, I would say, pharmaceutical medical product, although we don't have yet a vaccine. So the first point of my answer is that in my country, we had and we are of the opinion that only cooperation can be the key. international cooperation. We decided as Italy to spend a lot of money to participate to investing on the new vaccine. This will be an European vaccine. We are also participating to investing into an Italian vaccine that will be distributed for free to all the partners. Because when we are talking about a vaccine, we are talking about a system for preventing a new wave of the coronavirus. So it's absolutely necessary cooperation. What about the other member states? I have to recognize other member states were skeptical. As I said at the very beginning, others said, okay, we have our own way to react to coronavirus. And they failed, much worse than Italy. I just mentioned a country in Scandinavia where they say, okay, we don't need lockdown. We believe that people can be freely get out of the streets. And what is the result? That now Sweden is surrounded by closed borders because Denmark, Norway, Finland are really concerned about this neighbor. So we had many different ways. Now we are at the point where all the member states of Europe understood cooperation is the only way to succeed. So we have to rely on science, not on propaganda, saying, okay, coronavirus does not exist. It does exist. So if scientists say this is our prediction, we have to follow. The other and the final comment is on the International Organization, Health Organization, OMS. Frankly speaking, we would have liked something more from that important UN agency in terms of promoting cooperation, in terms also of urging China to tell the rest of the world what happened in the laboratory of Wuhan at the very beginning of the crisis. What was the origin? I don't know because I'm not a scientist, but the world wants to know what is at the origin of this terrible virus. And this is the missing point in the current international strategy.
I think, Mr. Frattini, you touched on a very critical issue. In the beginning of your talk, you said that Italy and some other countries were not able to get the solidarity that they really needed from the member states. This is
Yeah,
one story. The second story is the case of the World Health Organization and its response. It seems here that the nation states are emerging and becoming more, I think, active actors in this crisis. And there is a criticism of multilateralism because of the lack of cooperation, because of the failure of the international organizations, as you have just rightly mentioned. Do you think that in the current climate, multilateralism, transnational organizations, and nation states are mutually exclusive? Because this is what we see as an emerging trend in the international fora.
yeah. Of course, there is a risk. The risk, the terrible risk, in my view, is to renationalize policies and to start to believe United Nations system is not useful at all or is doing much less than what it should do, and so on and so forth. This would be a great mistake exactly in the year when we celebrate 75 years of the UN Charter. Next October will be the 75th anniversary. So in that moment, we have to work together to, I would say, study and to exchange opinion on how to strengthen multilateralism, not to reduce and to renationalize policies, because the biggest country in the world neither America, nor China, nor India would be able to resist alone without cooperation. But that kind of tendency exists. Unfortunately, it was the case of Europe, even within our family, within the European family, there were cases of states say, okay, it is not our problem. Then they realize it's also their problem. Like it was the case of immigration when Italy was left alone before the flows of migrants coming from the Northern Africa. So it is a good occasion, in my view, to, I would say, rethink about the role of United Nations and to make UN system stronger, more effective, and more democratic. Because frankly speaking, what I said about the International Health Organization is something which is missing in the world of today. We would have liked to see that organization much more proactive in promoting initiative rather than, I would say, publishing figures or forecast. For example, in the case of Latin America, Latin America is a terrible drama, is a nightmare because of some mistakes made by head of states, by prime minister. In that continent, we are looking at people dying massively. And what about the UN system? What they are doing in that situation? We are looking at the situation in Iran. Unfortunately, the leadership of Iran probably underestimated the seriousness of the crisis, but now we are realizing there are much more people that died than the one that were declared. So I think in that situation, we should be against those tendency to, I would say, I would excite nationalism. We have to excite multilateralism. This is absolutely the opposite. The same applies to economy. I see a dangerous tendency to relocalize the chains of production because of the problem of travels. Many in Europe are delocalizing towards Asian countries. Now they are relocalizing all the production chains in the cooperation between Italy and Turkey. This is not so evident because in Turkey there are no problems like in Italy, there are no problems. There is a bilateral cooperation. But if I think about Korea, if I think about China, when Italy has delocalized many chains of production, well, many the associations of enterprises are thinking of bringing back closer to Italy the production, maybe in the Balkans, maybe in Eastern Europe, and this is another tendency in the post-COVID era.
Mr. Frattini, as I understand, you are in favor of multilateralism and also, transnational, I think, cooperation. This is
Yeah.
very clear. But what would be your answer to those people, especially people like Lega Nord from your country and other populist and some far right movements in many places, that Italy, Spain, and some other countries are left alone during the COVID-19 pandemic, especially in the early stages? Then we see that those populist movements are getting more and more support. This is one case. Secondly, as you said, international organizations failed in terms of accountability, transparency, like the UN and also the World Health Organization. And now it seems that the populist movements are becoming more stronger in their rhetoric, in their, I think, discourse. What would be your answer to those people when you defend
Uh,
multilateralism?
well, I think we have to look at our interest. In diplomacy, in foreign affairs, there are personal friendship, but first of all, there are interest. We cannot underestimate the common feeling of ordinary people living in the south of Italy, they were, I would say, feeling to be left alone, because when I was commissioner also responsible for immigration. I used to help the Spanish government of Mr. Zapatero during the invasion of Canary Islands, and we succeeded. Nobody is talking any longer about Canary Island, but everybody's talking about Sicily. Why? Because Sicily, unfortunately, has been left alone, like the rest of Italy. So we cannot say, okay, we are snubbing the feeling of ordinary people, because at the end, people vote for populist parties, those that say Italy first. I think first of all, from Florence. Secondly, I'm Italian. Then I'm European. There is no contradiction, because if Europe is inactive, neither Spain nor Italy nor the biggest Germany can react to migration, and even more to an international pandemic like COVID. So my answer would be, going multilateral is in a common interest of ours. And second part of the question is, unfortunately, United Nations system needs to be reformed, deeply reformed. We need more democracy in the system of UN. And you know very well that from the very beginning, Italy and Turkey has been working on the same position: more democracy, more transparency, more relevance to the General Assembly, not only the Security Council. Think about the African continent. Nobody, no country is a permanent member of the Security Council, while continent of Africa represents much more than 1 billion of people. So this is the need for reform. This is why I mentioned the 75th anniversary. This could be a very good occasion to launch a worldwide appeal. Let's go together to reform UN, not to discredit UN. If UN doesn't want to be discredited, they should be reformed. This is the principle.
Mr. Frattini, actually, you have touched on an issue that Turkey has been defending for many years. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has called for UN reform, and he has a motto actually. He says, the world is bigger than five. That means five Security Council members. And you have said that I think Italy has a similar vision to
Yeah,
reform. If we would like to see the future of maybe multilateralism, some kind of attraction. I think that is an important issue that we have just covered. Now, I would like to come back to the EU again, because recently EU decided to have a recovery package, and I think it has a huge budget. In this context, what are the main challenges, especially financial and economic challenges, that Italy will face, and how Italy will address those expectations and also problems, and what will be the share of Italy in this budget?
well, the share of Italy will be probably one of the hugest ones among the member states. We are talking about roughly 200 billions of euros, including grants and loans. Uh, Italy will be facing in the next months probably the most important challenge since the Second World War. The most important challenge is to reform the country, spending money very well in a very visible, transparent, and tangible way to all the citizens. This is the best way to regain the public trust. I'm as a judge, I'm dealing on anti-mafia cases. Very tough job for an Italian judge. But I see when the mafia gangs uses the dirty money to exploit the poorer, the vulnerable people. This increasing the public mistrust vis-à-vis the institution. The court rulings are a response, but we need a comprehensive governmental response. So the challenge is spending money, all the money for tangible infrastructure, healthcare, development, creating jobs for the younger generation. These are the main sectors for Italy: agriculture, manufacturing. All the sector have to be shown to the people to say we are not wasting the European money, because otherwise at the end I would be, as a honest man, obliged to give reason to those that at the very beginning raised doubts about the Italian capacity of spending money. We want to demonstrate we are capable to spend money in a honest way. I'm a judge, so I have to make all the laws fully respected. But we are talking about a challenge for the whole of political forces. Nobody's out. Opposition and majority have been facing and will be facing the same challenge.
Mr. Frattini, I think many countries will face similar challenges, not only Italy. And in the beginning, we have said that this is a global pandemic. And in the beginning, we closed the borders. And I think we come to a stage that we reopened it. And now there is a travel, increasing number of people moving around. And also within the countries, some of the restrictions were lifted. Given the experience of Italy, because Italy has started maybe not as much as we expected in terms of dealing with the issue, but later on, Italy succeeded in reducing the number of deaths and also illnesses, etc. Uh, and that happened actually with the little support of the European Union in the beginning. So Italians have really succeeded in many cases. But now
Yeah,
what we see that in many places there is a talk about the second wave of pandemic because of
yeah,
the restrictions on because restrictions are lifted. What will be the lessons that Italians will share with the world outside? I mean, what sort of lessons you have learned that you can share with the Turkish people, with the European Union, with other countries? Because this experience is an important one for us.
yeah. The lesson number one is, please don't underestimate the first symptoms, because we have to tremendously increase prevention. When we realize somebody is got infected, it's too late. We have to, I would say, try to multiply the modern system that the science is offering to us for pre-detection in order to prevent. This is the first, and don't under-evaluate and underestimate the first also minimum symptom that can hide the pandemic. Second lesson, be serious. All those people that want to, I would say, enjoy holidays, do it, but with prudence. Social distance is still important. I prefer going up to the mountain where is the fresh air. But even in the mountain, you have to be careful, because nobody likes to be infected. We have no right to damage the others. So seriousness and personal individual responsibility is the lesson number two. And the lesson number three, I repeat, cooperation. We have to work together to have the vaccine available before the end of the autumn, well before the end of the year. In December, we have to share, we have to supply the vaccine to ordinary people. These are the three main lessons. Then there are those that are really stupid, those that want to organize a party that even used to call COVID party, one knowing to be infected invited the other to challenge the contagion. I challenge that we will be not infected. All were infected. It happened not in Italy, but all the TVs have shown these stupid people dancing, and few days later they were all in the hospital in the intensive care.
Mr. Frattini, in many countries, there are some vulnerable people. Immigrants and refugees, I think, are at the top of the list. Of course, there are people unemployed, there are people who are suffering from poverty. But
Yeah,
given the burden that Italy carries on its shoulders with regard to the immigration, because Italy is one of the first, I think, point of arrival. Italy has a lot of, I think, also, burden, experience, and pays the price in many senses. What were the cases, especially with the vulnerable people, and how Italy managed uh, their healthcare, their treatment, their well-being
yeah.
and how you can compare Italy with other European Union member states?
Well, it is very simple. By law, there are no differences between healthcare due to a refugee, healthcare due to an old man, and healthcare due to me. No differences. Everyone who is at risk or suspected infected or infected have to be cared. No differences at all. We guarantee now in Italy, fortunately, the rate of contagion is close to zero, is 0.5, is practically nothing. But the only areas where there are some real risk is the southern region when those poor refugees arrive before they are tested, before they are tested to understand if there is a risk, they try to escape. If they escape, they disappear overnight, and unfortunately, they can disseminate, they can share this contagion. But we have the great problem of the older generation of Italians. They were mostly the victims. The average, the victims of COVID in Italy were above 82, 83 years old. So quite old people, uh, also maybe sick for other reasons already. So the body was very weak. But uh, nevertheless, we try now to increase prevention to migrants and refugees and to the old people, uh, uh, those that are older than 65, 68. And in that way, we keep under control all those, for example, small hospitals that are reserved for the older person that are ill for one reason and they get infected by COVID and they risk to die. So this is the target number one in Italy now.
Mr. Frattini, I think immigration is a global issue, but it is also an important, I think, challenge. And with regard to Turkey-EU relations, I just would like to raise that issue because you have touched on this issue
Yeah,
briefly, especially on the immigration issue. Turkey and EU had a deal. Turkey today, I think, is hosting the greatest number of you know refugees in the world.
yes,
It's about
yes.
5 million, and that requires a lot of cooperation. Do you think that the EU and Turkey has been cooperating good enough, and EU has been providing sufficient support to Turkey?
Not at all. Europe provides money, but money is not enough. I visited the region of Gaziantep upon invitation of Minister Çavuşoğlu, and I saw with my eyes all those poor people coming from Syria, desperate people, and unfortunately, And think about not only Turkey, which is a rich and powerful country, think about Jordan, think about Lebanon, that are also neighbors of Syria and victims as well, even more vulnerable given the situation of poverty in those two countries. That said, Europe should have done something more and something different. Something different, first of all, offering to Turkey a gesture of confidence. I was the one initiating the visa free policy, and I granted visa free regime to Albania, to Serbia, to Bosnia, to Montenegro, but we were unable to grant so far to Turkey visa free regime. This is absolutely wrong, and this is absolutely unjust, because I remember myself all the protocols, all the documents at the very beginning, setting the commitments of the two sides, and as a result, full visa free regime to the Turkish people. This is something different, something more in terms of two things: humanitarian corridors. Many of the Syrians don't want to stay forever in Turkey, as you know better than me. They want to return at home. But if they want to return, and there is even not one single humanitarian corridor to get back, even after the so called liberation of the origin city, how can they return to? Because, many of those people are professionals. They are not like the African migrants, desperate people, very poor. In many cases, I saw in Gaziantep, they establish small business, they establish small shops. So there are people that would like to return in Syria as soon as possible. So the soft power of Europe should have been deployed in that way. And on the political point of view, first point is visa-free regime. We know that there are many Europeans are looking for job in Turkey, but not so many Turkish looking for job in Europe. So what kind of preoccupation to guarantee visa-free regime is only a gesture of political mistrust. And since I've been from the very beginning a friend of Turkey, I understand the preoccupation of your leadership.
Mr. Frattini, we have got only 2 minutes left. I would like to ask a question that relates to Italy, European Union, Turkey, and of course, the case is Libya. How do you see European Union's policy towards Libya today, where there is a lot of immigration, a lot of risk that is posed to that
Yeah,
country?
well, I would define as a non-existing policy, because the only mission is the mission, I would say, aiming at preventing trafficking of weapons. They prevent trafficking of weapons by sea, not by land. So one of the two sides, in particularly Turkey, is, I would say, catched from those Italian European vessels. But what happens from the desert through the border between Egypt and Libya? What happens with the weapons provided for by our Arab countries arriving directly to the hands of General Haftar? So my solution would be the following: neither Turkish supported entity nor Russian and Egyptian supporter will prevail, because that would represent partition of Libya in two. Status quo. Status quo would be nightmare in my personal view. Turkey is strong enough, Russia is strong enough to get together, as they did with Idlib, as they did with the north of Syria. President Erdogan, President Putin getting together, and they decide, okay, stop violence. This should be the only way to stabilize Libya.
Mr. Frattini, with that, our digital talks, digital debate comes to an end. Thank you very much for
Thanks.
joining us. We
It
hope to
has
see
been a
you.
pleasure. It has been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Bye
Thank you.
bye.
Bye bye. We come to
Bye.
the end
Thank
of
you.
our digital debates today, TRT World Forum. Hope to see you in another debate. Thank you and
With
goodbye to
pleasure.
all.
Bye bye. Thank you. Bye.